All right, guys, Rick here. I've got another Q&A for you. This one went over pretty well last time, so I figured it was a good opportunity to do it again, just in case any of you guys had, some more questions that you wanted answered with more detail. So I did get a few, guys, and I picked these three right behind me. We'll go over them in a moment. And I really thought they were the most important, and they deserved a more in-depth kind of review. So starting off, guys, I put a blog post out on my website the other day going over the full body split and kind of why we use it on the TrainerX performance programming platform versus any of the other splits out there. Kind of want to start this off by saying the other splits that you can do, your upper, lower, back and buys, chest and tries, things like that, the bro split, they're not bad. They're going to get you a lot of results, and a lot of people really enjoy breaking up their training week like that, and that's okay. So if you find yourself in this routine, I'm not saying anything bad about what you're doing, but what I do want to do is give you an idea or a glimpse into why we use full body splits and kind of why we think, or why I think, they're superior to the other options out there. So the blog post itself was really about going over what the full body split is, kind of what movement patterns we use and why we do it. With the full body split, right, we're focusing on 6 of the functional movement patterns. So you have your squat, your lunge, your hinge, that's something like a deadlift. You have your press, your pull, and then anything core related. And when I say core related, I mean stuff that really forces you to brace here in your abdominals. So those are the 6 movement patterns that we focus on a daily basis when it comes to these full body splits. And we try and hit each of those every single day in one form or another. When we do this, it really allows for us to, delay some of the muscle soreness that you're going to see when you do, say, a bro split or legs one day a week, and you just hammer away at 6 different leg exercises, and then you're sore for 3 days. You can't even sit down on a chair without your hamstrings killing you, right? So with a full body split, you're going to avoid that, because instead of doing a ton of volume on one day, you're going to spread it out throughout the week, right? And you're not going to get this just whack of incredible soreness. And by spreading out that volume over the week, we're also able to perform better on those working sets, right? We can bring more intensity. You're not going to feel the fatigue that you would if you were hitting 6 different leg exercises in one day. And I'll give you a quick example. Guys, imagine you're doing a leg day, right? You're gonna hit your first set, you've got back squats, or your first exercise. You're gonna do a 5x5, okay? Pretty heavy weights, say you're right in that 75 to 85% of your 1 rep max range, and you've got 25 reps that you gotta hit, okay? That's going to be very taxing on your body. Then you go do some, we'll call it split squats to get the unilateral work in, okay? Maybe you do 3 to 5 sets of that, of anywhere from 8 to 10 reps. Okay, those reps that you do for the split squat aren't going to be nearly as productive as the reps you put in for the back squat, because your legs are now fatigued, right? You're tired. So you might not be able to use, the heaviest weight that you possibly can for that rep count. And when it boils down to it, if we're not using the weights that we need to for specific rep counts, we're not going to reap the benefits of those working sets. All right, and then it just goes downhill from there, right? If you do a 3rd leg exercise, you're gonna have even more fatigue, and you're not gonna be able to do as much as you hoped you would be able to do, and it goes on, right? The list can continue. So that's one big thing why the full body split is going to help reduce fatigue. As far as, anything else goes, I wanna go over why the full body split actually, helps when it comes to building muscle or getting stronger, okay? So there was a study, right, and I linked this in the article that I wrote on my website. I'll put the link to the blog and that blog post has this article in there. But there was a study that took a group of guys who did a full body split and then a classic push-pull lower split, right? Now with that push-pull lower split, they were hitting one muscle group per day. The full body split, they were hitting each muscle group every single day. Now they were doing the exact same amount of volume, right? The same amount of training each and every day at the same intensity. I believe they were, it was stated that they were all taking every single set to failure. That's hearsay, so to speak. I'm not 100% sure if they actually were going to failure, right? Going to failure is a pretty difficult thing. I know we do that a lot here on programs like BuildRx, but I always have a little bit of doubt, even with myself when it comes to going to absolute failure with working sets. But enough of that, right? So these two groups, right? So they split the group up. One did full body, one had that push-pull lower split. When the training period was over, right, when the study was over, they found that the group that did the full body split actually had more muscle mass, right? They built more muscle mass and they got stronger compared to the group that did the push-pull lower. And one of the really interesting things about that is the group that did the push-pull lower, they didn't have near as much, I guess, exposure to specific, muscle groups, okay? And they didn't put in the volume, say, that the group that worked full body splits did. So their top end strength suffered because they weren't getting a ton of exposure to the heavy weights that they needed to build top end strength. And they also didn't build as much muscle mass because they weren't putting in appropriate amounts of muscle appropriate amounts of volume over the course of the week, to put on that muscle mass or size. Right now, that full body group, because they hit each muscle group every day or 5 times over the course of the week in comparison to once, they were putting on more muscle mass. They were getting stronger, significantly stronger, because they were getting exposed to those heavy weights that you need to build that top end strength. And I'm not going to go on any more about this study. It's really interesting, guys. If you want to, read more about it, definitely hit that link in the description of this video. The article's great, and I think it does a really, really good job of explaining why full body splits are, definitely more productive than the other splits out there. So that's a little bit about the full body split versus the others. Let's talk really quick about why we use the full body split on the entire TrainerX performance programming platform. We use it with BuildRx, we use it with HybridRx, StrengthRx, and even the other conditioning programs. It looks a little bit different on each of these. To start off with BuildRx, guys, it's very straightforward. You're gonna hit one exercise for each of the movement patterns every single day, 5 times per week, right? When it comes to something like HybridRx or StrengthRx, where we have a combination of strength training and conditioning, it's going to look a little bit different in terms of what we do for the strength work and the conditioning work. Now, each day will always come down to a full body training day, but you might not do full body strength. You're gonna do 2 or 3 strength specific exercises followed by anything else that's left, for the body in the conditioning. And when it comes down to our conditioning programs like Metcon RX or WOD RX, right, the CrossFit based stuff, we still do full body splits. We try and hit at least one movement in each of those conditioning pieces, right? Or whether it's in just one conditioning piece, doesn't matter. We're going to hit a movement pattern from each muscle group. What's really important about this, especially on my programs, is we do this so we don't go into this kind of period of overworking ourselves, right? Or building too much fatigue that we can't recover from. So when we do the full body splits, you're not gonna see, and this is gonna be for one of the strength and conditioning programs, we'll call it HybridRx. If you do back squats, right, for your strength work on that day, you're not going to see another lower body push or knee dominant exercise in the conditioning work, right? Because now we're just putting fatigue on a muscle group that's already been fatigued. there's no reason to push it any further. Now, I know there's a lot of programs out there that, you're gonna do back squats, and then in the conditioning, you might do front squats or walking lunges or even thrusters at that point. And I don't find that productive at all, because the fatigue from the back squat is going to affect your performance in the conditioning. And if the fatigue affects your performance in the conditioning, there's no way you're going to actually benefit from the conditioning. And the goal is to benefit from the conditioning, right? So we want to do movements that are going to help us get the results that we want. And that same thing applies for strength RX, and then it also applies for, say, Metcon RX. With Metcon RX, you might have a couple AMRAPs in one day, and you're not going to do walking lunges in the first 9-minute AMRAP and then do front squats in the second 9-minute AMRAP and then do thrusters in the third. It just doesn't work like that, right? We're not going to do repeated movements. That way we don't overwork ourselves and we don't build up this unnecessary amount of fatigue, right? So that's what we do on the whole entire platform. And I program it that way because of all of the things I just went over, right? So guys, if you want a little bit more about the full body splits, click that link in the description of this video. It'll go over a little bit more in depth. And I hope I was able to give you a better idea as to why we use it. Next up on our board, right, a lot of you guys were asking, can I combine multiple programs? Short answer, yes, you can. Do I recommend it? Not all the time, right? It can get a little bit complicated. Myself, I do combine 2 different programs, and there's a lot of you who are already on the platform who do the exact same thing as I do. But for someone who's just coming into TrainRx performance programming, I definitely recommend sticking to one, at least for a month or two, just to get an idea, kind of as to what it is that you're doing with your training. But as far as combining programs goes, guys, there's a couple combinations that definitely work. And there's also a few that do not work at all, and I don't recommend trying it. So as far as the ones that do work, okay, let's start off. It's a very easy one. Build RX and any of the conditioning programs, right? So that could be Metcon RX, that could be WOD RX, Base RX, Dumbbell RX, anything that's conditioning based, right? And for something like this, I would recommend doing Build RX 3 times per week, and then hitting the conditioning workouts 2 to 3 times per week. And it all depends on how many training days you want in that week. My preference is 5, so I usually do 3 days of Build RX and then 2 days of Metcon RX, because I prefer the formats in that program for my conditioning. But I also have other people who are doing 3 days of each, and that works just fine for them. Another option that you can do as far as combining programs goes, you can combine Hybrid RX with another one of the conditioning based programs, right? Say you want to do 2 or 3 days a week with your training that includes strength and conditioning, and then the other days of the week you only want to do conditioning. That is totally fine. You can do that. That works. As far as the combinations that do not work, I would not combine something like Build RX and Hybrid RX, or Build RX and Strength RX. Better yet, I wouldn't combine WOD RX with Metcon RX, right? Because now we're just building on top of things that are already getting covered. Okay, you don't need to combine multiple programs that are virtually doing the same thing. And when I say they're virtually doing the same thing, it's not necessarily the training on each day is the same thing. It's just that the purpose of each program is exactly the same, just in a different manner. So you don't need to combine it. It just gets things all convoluted and messy, and you don't need to do that to yourself. You want your training to be simple. You want to be able to open your app, look at what you're doing, and say, okay, this is what I've got. Let's go. All right. So short answer, yes, you can combine programs. I always tell people, if they want to do it, please just reach out to me, ask me. I'll give you an idea of what you should do, kind of help you lay out a roadmap on how to do it as well. The last question, guys, the big one, I get this all the time: rest days. What do I do for rest days? What do I recommend people do for rest days? Is active recovery something that you should do? And to go over it, guys, rest days for me, right? They are what they sound like they are. actual rest days, right? I work out 5 times per week and I rest 2 times per week. During those rest days, I'm not doing anything that is physically taxing. I joked about it on Instagram and I said the most taxing thing I do is walk my dog. And that's the truth, right? I'll walk the dog, but I'm not gonna hop on a bike and do intervals for 20 minutes. I'm not gonna hop on a rower. I'm not gonna go for a 40-minute run because those things still put some kind of stress on the body, right? And if you're training at high intensities, you need to give your body the opportunity to recover from all of that work. So if you're just adding more stress, you're never going to recover. You're never going to, reap the benefits of your training. So when it comes to the rest days, guys, take them, okay? Use them. They're gonna help you in the long run, and you're gonna feel less beat up and worn down over a greater period of time, right? Because the less beat up you are, the more you can train, the more results you're going to get. Before we wrap this up, let's talk really quick about active recovery days. A lot of you know how I feel about active recovery. I'm not a huge fan, and I think it's kind of a fad, a little bit of a trend that the Instagram world has put on a lot of people. Active recovery, it's really what has turned into people doing, hard cyclical workouts, sprints or interval work on a bike or a rower, or going on runs or hitting hill sprints, things like that. That's not active recovery, guys. If you're sprinting on a bike, you're producing a ton of power, right? And that's very taxing on your central nervous system. So when we see these active recovery workouts on the internet or on Instagram, and you see these people just huffing and puffing, sucking wind, pouring sweat on an assault bike, and they're calling it active recovery, it's a load of crap. It's not recovery at all, right? If you really, really want to do something that gets you in the gym on an active recovery day, hop on a bike and ride for 60 minutes at a pace that you could hold for 5 hours, right? Go really slow, right? And that's going to be active recovery. And this is where I see a lot of people just, kind of misuse the term or misuse the concept, right? So they say they go into these active recovery days and then they hit a really, really hard sprint workout and it's not recovery at all. So if you are going to, do these active recovery days, guys, think about how hard you're pushing yourself. Think about the intensity that you're working at, and really consider actually just taking the day off itself and not working out. It's good to get out of the gym. It's good to go outside instead, do something else. Spend time with friends, anything aside from, lifting weights. But yeah, so that's just how I feel about the rest days, guys. Thanks for tuning into this. I hope I was able to give you a little bit more of an in-depth view on some of these topics. Please feel free to ask me any questions in the comments. I'll get back to you. If you want to chat about anything, shoot me an email. As always, it's great being able to give you guys this kind of information, and I really appreciate all of you on the platform. Without you guys, wouldn't have any of this. So enjoy the rest of your day. I'll talk to y'all soon.